G'day there, Cygnets and Swanlings. 2012 Premiership player Nick Smith here. It's my pleasure, as always, to introduce a bevy of bloods, a fan podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club, brought to you by Noddy and Stevo, a pair of red and white tragics. So pop on the kettle and settle in as the boys had an in-depth chat about the Swans' last game, the Swans' next game, and a little bit about footy too. This is Nick Smith signing off until next week's episode. But in the meantime, remember, be good to your bloods and they'll be good to you.
Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods for season 2022. I'm your host, Noddy, joined today by Stevo. In this episode number 29, we're going to be reviewing the games we played as part of the preseason and have a general chat about the season ahead while we're at it. G'day, Stevo. Welcome back to the first episode of the year. We haven't done an episode since that end of season review last year after that very disappointing 1-point loss. How have you been, mate?
Yeah, it was disappointing, but we're moving forward. New season. I've been good. All of that seems like it's a long way in the past now. And yeah, hard to believe the preseason's all done. And next time we see the Swans is going to be round 1, 2 weeks, less than 2.
Yeah, likewise, mate. We're all geared up for rounds 1 and 2. We've got little plugger coming along to both of them, so hopefully
yes,
we'll storm the field for Buddy's 1000th. We got some special caps too, so we're all looking forward to it as a family, and the Swans boys as well. We can't wait for it. Bit of housekeeping to kick off this year. This year we're doing something a little different. We're going to be doing a review-only podcast of the seniors team, aiming to release early on in the week, and this year with revolving guests, yourself included. Then via our socials on Facebook and Instagram, we're going to be releasing a team selection reaction video on Thursday nights as teams are announced, as well as a few quick previews of the game ahead. On top of that, our good mate Chris, who runs a quick bevy with Swans fans, he'll be doing some live content on game day, chatting with other Swans fans at the pub, on the way to the ground, or even at the ground itself. So it's going to be a massive year for the Bevy of Bloods family. We're really excited about it. It's a new approach, so we're going to be figuring things out as we go, but it should be awesome and good fun. All right, let's get into it. Game 1, the unofficial practice match against the Giants down in Albury, Friday, 25th of Feb. Good solid crowd, 7,000, which I think was roughly the size of the crowd against the Eagles in Geelong last year. Very ordinary broadcast quality, but glad to have seen it anyway. Yeah, I know it was so patchy, wasn't it, coming in and out there? At times I was thinking, oh, God, am I going to keep watching this? But, yeah, glad I went through anyway. There were 4 30-minute quarters, followed by those 2 periods of 20 minutes, which I didn't see, but you did, I think, Stevo. I didn't realise it carried on, but I watched it afterwards anyway, or at the second viewing. But, yeah, they were called the 5th quarter and the 6th quarter. And, obviously, GWS won the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and we won the 4th. Tied the 5th, and then they won the 6th, but eventually won by 31 points. Didn't really matter what the score was. It was more about the play and how the young players played. But look, we generally seemed slower, a little less switched on, but we also had some good moments of play. As I said, wasn't too concerned that we got beaten, but most concerningly was Tommy Papley's hammy. You never want to have an injury in a practice match. But anyway, both teams were very inaccurate. Interestingly, though, I think you might like this one, Stevo. GWS scored the same amount of goals as behinds in all but the first quarter. So a little bit of a quirky stat here. In the second, they scored 7-7. Third, they scored 10-10. Fourth, 12-12. Fifth, 14-14. And sixth, 18-18. I don't think you can read that. You wouldn't have predicted that. But anyway, over to you, mate, for general thoughts.
Yeah, I love those little quirky numbers. I mean, look, in terms of these games, the first game of the season, it's going to be rough. Although we do have less of these preseason games than we've had in the past, so there's only 2. So we do get a bit more of a good idea of how the side's going to look already in the first one, maybe more than when there was, 3+ of these games in previous years. But look, I'm never really that bothered about how the team goes in these first ones. I'm mostly just interested in which new players that have come into the club are, showing their goods. If there's older guys moving around in new positions, and mostly that the core of the list gets through without any injuries. So yeah, like you said, the Papley injury was definitely hard to take, and it's going to hurt, but there's good replacements. We've got a really strong amount of depth on the list, but yeah, hope to get him back as soon as possible. Then in terms of balance of the game, the Giants got away with a start. And after that, it was pretty even. I think the Swans got their game going. There was some good ball movement as it went on, but then pretty wasteful going forward. And then after the four quarters that you mentioned, that was when mostly the senior players were going around. There was only a couple of kicks. I think it was 15 points difference at the end of the fourth quarter. And then I think the margin got blown out a little bit. There was a couple of late GWS goals in some absolute junk time at the end when it was 12 versus 12 for the last period. It was just whatever reserves players could still run. And not even the umpire stuck around, actually. But Jared McVeigh, I don't know. I mean, I think because I'm on the international broadcast, so we got to see the whole 6 periods in a hit and then also on the replay. So I think maybe a lot of those in Australia didn't see it. But by the 5th period, I think it was 14 versus 14 or something. And by the final one, it was 12 versus 12. And for those final 2 periods, Jared McVeigh was umpiring and one of the Giants coaches was umpiring. So that was how that went. And then I guess
remember Stevo just on that, Jared McVeigh, I saw him umpiring and he let an absolute, I think it was like a high tackle or something on a Swans player. He just let it go. And I was like, oh, come on, mate. Macca. But anyway, all good.
Yeah, it's a tough job umpiring. It's not as easy as it looks. If a champion of the game can let some absolute howlers go. The only other thing I think I really took from that first game was that it was pretty clear that the senior players that were in those first 4 periods are probably the ones that are going to be looked at for round 1.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Look, we'll just go through some players that we thought stood out. So I'll do 3 and you do 3, and I think we don't have overlap, so that's interesting. Paddy McCartan obviously took his opportunity in this first game with Melican out with concussion. We think that's what it was. Looked very comfortable in defence with his younger brother. His intercepting and read of the ball is elite, and much has been spoken about him by now after game 2, which we'll get on after this. But I just think even from that first game, he looked very, very good there. I've had some robust debate online with Swans fans saying there's just no way that he's going to play in defence and he's not going to play round 1. But hey, it's looking pretty different now. Petey Laddams looked busy, chopping out for Hickey, obviously, mostly forward, kicked 2 goals, both quite impressive. The first one in particular, they replayed that about 1,000 times on the broadcast. But he's got a very nice left kick and a very deft touch for a big man. So there's some exciting signs there from him. Lastly, even though he didn't blow me away, I thought that Still Stevens in general, he's looking bigger, he's looking fitter, if that's possible. He's looking like he's going to be able to hold his own in the contact more and hopefully contest a bit more this year. Obviously, his elite running was on show again with huge 2-way transitions. So some positive signs there from Dill for me. Over to you, Stevo.
Can you guess what I'm going to say? I mean, because you can see the run sheet, but it's no surprise.
I knew it was going to. I was going to say about him as well, but I was like, no, Stevo's going to talk about him. But it's definitely Arrow.
That's the one. He was great, wasn't he? I mean, he really asserted himself on the game. He played some forward, some wings, some midfield. He was in a few centre bounces, and I mean, he uses the ball beautifully. He gets himself in good spots. He's got this beautiful, economical kicking action, which, every single time you get to slow him down a bit, he's great to watch kick. And I really think, he's only a second-year player, and he missed a chunk of games last year, 5 or 6 games or something. And I think he can go from a great rookie year, where he was definitely the best from his draft who played last year. Didn't win the Rising Star, but there were some older ones who were ahead of him for that. This can be a real statement year. I think he can be an outstanding player already by the back half of the season.
Yeah, he's definitely tracking that way. Yeah.
Yes, I've talked all about Errol, but I'm allowed to talk about 2 more. So Chad Warner, I thought he was really good. And honestly, before the game, I thought he was maybe a bit on the fringes, kind of fighting for a spot. And now he looks like a lock for round 1. I think he's just so damaging the way that he cuts through the lines. And I was thinking about this, and I was chatting with my brother about it, actually, and we both sort of agreed on it, that we're probably thinking of Warner that we got back at the late part of last season when he'd had an injury layoff and he was sort of getting himself back into it. And that's the Warner that I was thinking was maybe on the fringes. I'd forgotten about the Warner who broke through the centre against Richmond and shrugged a tackle and kicked a goal from the 50 arc. I'd forgotten we had that bloke, and that was the guy who was playing in the preseason. So Chad Warner was my other favourite from the seniors, at least. And then from the reserves game, I mean, this isn't a best on ground or anything. I don't think he was among the best, but Roberts, number 34, for those who were seeing the reserves, and if you see him going around, young Matt Roberts has come from South Australia. I was just really excited with the way that he moved and how calm he is when he gets the football. He looked like he's ready to be playing seniors, I think, already. Like, I'd be surprised if he doesn't play some AFL this year.
Yeah, I mean, we went into a bit of depth at the time when we took him, and you quoted his state league coach, I think, and a lot of people had knocked his aerobic ability, but I mean, the coach said he does numbers like Travis Boak or whatever, and I thought like he's kind of a stocky young guy, but he covers the ground so well, and as you say, yeah, he's one of those players who seems to have time on his hands. I also thought that Gussie Sheldrick did a few nice things, and
Yeah,
and I
also.
also thought maybe depending on where they go, we'll look at teams, possible teams later on, but that he could have been a smoky for Papley. But anyway, yeah, we'll probably not looking like that just yet. But yeah, cheers for that, Steve. All right, so we'll just list the did not plays. So obviously they rested Cal Mills for that first game. Joel Amadi was out, Melican was out, Sheether was out, Corey Warner was out, and Naismith, who we'll talk about later on. And obviously the injury from that game is Tommy Papley, massive loss. So, all right, well, that was that one. Let's move on to game 2. And this is the official Amy preseason community match against North Melbourne, at the Giants Stadium in Sydney, Sunday the 6th of March. Obviously, very glad to have Mills back in the team. I was actually pleasantly surprised to see he was announced as playing. Very happy to hear he made it through the game. But yeah, he looked pretty good doing his sort of thing. Yeah, very, very stoked to see him. So, look, I think we took a while to get into the game. Obviously, the Roos started well, had some good pressure early, but once we worked into it, it was basically us the whole way. And we won by 30 points or something in the end. McLean and McDonald both played. Obviously, they rested Buddy, but I think they both played better than they did in game 1. But for me, it was hard to say which of the two had the better game. So I think, and we'll touch on this later. I think that's probably the position that's one of these two guys is gonna probably miss out. So we have quite a tall team at the moment and tall depth. So yeah, I think that's the squeeze position. And they're my general thoughts. How about you, mate?
Yeah, I think you're right. There's lots of pressure on that final tall forward spot, and there's quite a backlog of guys who are trying to get it. Um, Look, I was just glad to get through with no more injuries, especially after what happened at Papley in the first game, and then I was really pleased to see some of these sort of newer generation players playing well. So these sort of like under 21, under 22. I thought they all put in some really good efforts and didn't rely on the senior players so much. I mean, Franklin didn't play. Kennedy's got a new role. Rampy wasn't as prominent, so it was really nice to see some of these younger ones step up. Look, it wasn't the easiest game to watch. It wasn't great standard football, but we don't expect that at this time of the year. When the Swans did manage to get it on their terms, I think they showed that with their game style, they'll play some really good football this year, which was promising. And again, like I said with the first one, it's really hard to see anyone who didn't feature in this game, besides probably Franklin and Laddams, in the mix to play round 1. And I'm not counting the 3 who came on very late, so Ronk, Roberts, and McAndrew, who all came on really late. I think that there's a core group of about 25 that the 22 and a half will come from for 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, I did love the look of Stretch though, laying some big rugby union tackles.
Yeah.
I thought he's a real exciting, really good prospect for the future. All right, let's get on to our best 3 for this game. So I'm going to kick off. I think we do have one similar player. We just both have to talk. We may as well both talk about him as I shout him out, Stevo. Juzzy McInerney was just unreal. Just getting a stack of the ball, using it with really high efficiency, 2-way gut running and kicking goals. It's just, I think he's really shaping up to have a massive season and probably the guy that fills that Dawson void. There's probably a mix of them, but he might be the front runner at the moment. Is that how you saw it?
Oh, look, he was fantastic, wasn't he? And yeah, I mean, losing Dawson hurts, but if this guy, McInerney, can keep improving his game and become a dominant player in the AFL, he's only 21 years old. He was eligible for the Rising Star just last year. That at least takes a bit of a sting off. I mean, you can't replace a player like Dawson. He's a very, very good player, but someone like McInerney really growing can certainly help. And interesting, you talked about 2-way running, and that's something that I definitely envy you guys in Australia or in Sydney who can go to watch the games live, because it's something which never really shows up so well on the TV. So I would love to get to a game at some point. And be able to watch how someone like McInerney runs or like Heaney runs, because these elite players, they really, really run up and down, up and down, up and down. And that's where they really excel a lot of the time, not just their skill level, but his ability to run. And you can see it in the way he collects the ball and transitions. So yeah, great game.
Yeah, and you saw it in that goal, like he was working working hard out of the centre square and then pushed hard and hard and hard when he probably didn't have to, and worked really, really hard, got on the end and kicked a lovely goal, as Juzzy does. But Steve, I'll have to talk to some of the boys and we'll put together the two-way running report for you. And
Yes.
we'll give you some inside goss of who's doing the hard yards. But yeah, it's definitely going to be like the likes of the Heat, as you just mentioned, Heaney and Juzzy leading from the front. But all right, I'll get on to my second two. I thought Rowie really stepped up after a pretty quiet game against GWS. So, like, he had a couple of really nice spins in and out of contact against the Giants, but then really wasted the ball, I thought. And I thought, oh, geez, he's started with he's either lacking confidence or is a bit rusty or feeling the pressure of the depth that we've got. But I thought he really stepped up in this game against the Roos, and he was, he was ferocious in the contest. He set the tone for our tackling efforts in the wet. And I think he's probably that guy who's going to, if there's a role that's going to be given out, a run with role, a tagging role, a defensive mid role, that's going to be Rowie, obviously with Hewitt heading off to Carlton at the end of last season. So I see that happening with Rowie, and I'm bullish about it, and I'm hopeful that he can string together some performances because he's obviously one of our young leaders and really promising player. Along with McInerney, as we mentioned a second ago, I thought Blakey was really active off the halfback. Had a few really good moments, line-breaking play, and a couple of beautiful inside 50 kicks to targets. Can't remember who it was now, but I think it did ended in a goal, the one I'm thinking of. But yeah, Lizard just looked pretty active. He was a bit quiet in the first game as well, and so it was good to see him step it up, and hopefully some more exciting things to come this year.
Yeah, actually, I agree with you on Rowbottom too. Just quickly, I think he's one that I've been a bit unsure on, especially since he was out of the side last year, then couldn't get back in. He was stuck out. I was like, oh, what's going to happen with him? Because we got so many good young midfielders coming through, and I was afraid that he might be one that'd be squeezed out. And I'd be disappointed if that was the case because I really like the way he goes about playing his footy. And I think you're spot on. Like, there's that role that that Hewitt has left open, and also I guess with Kennedy, if he's going to be spending less time on the inside getting knocked around, hopefully Rowbottom can be that one who steps in and gets to play that sort of more crash and bash in and under midfield role and feed it out to all the elite users we got. We got like 20 guys on the squad that have got beautiful kicks. If Rowbottom could just feed it to them, he doesn't have to be a beautiful kick as well. I guess we can forgive him that weakness. Yeah. And then. Yeah, but not everyone can be like the best kick in the comp.
No, that's right. Yeah, and you need those guys to dish it out. You need those, like, for want of a better term, the halfbacks of rugby union. You just got to feed it out to the users and crack on. So yeah, he seems to really relish that, and hopefully, he can put it together this year because it'd be exciting. Yeah,
so fingers crossed he can have a really good year. And then Isaac Heaney. I mean, he stood out. He kicked 4 goals. He got probably 15 something touches in a preseason match. And look, I really hope this is the year that he shows the rest of the AFL just how good he is, and that he should be considered in the same sentence as, your Nat Fyfe and Bontempelli and Dustin Martin, Oliver, these sort of elite players. I think he belongs among them. He just needs to put together a solid 20-plus game season of good footy, and he'll be elevated to that level. Definitely. Yeah, which is where he belongs because he's a very good footballer. And then the other one, Paddy McCartan, again, like with Roberts before, not necessarily my best 3 for the game, but just really, really great to see him out there playing and forcing the coaches to pick him round 1. I mean, I'd pick him. I've got him locked in one of those 2 key tall positions alongside his brother. So good on him for the comeback that he's on the way to making, and let's hope he's out there in 2 weeks.
Well, that's it. Hey, like he's basically forced the issue. Like a lot of Swans fans were like umming and ahhing, weren't quite sure what he's, maybe he was depth, maybe he wasn't. Surely he's not going to, have any impact. But yeah, he's clearly come in. He can clearly play. Like, he's a very, very gifted player. And they just look good down there, don't they, Tommy and Paddy? Like, they just seem very symbiotic. Like they can read each other. They sort of know each other obviously well as brothers, and it's looking good. But it's great having someone like Melican who's a solid, that one-on-one. I know some Swans fans don't rate him, but I think he's a pretty solid, performer, and obviously Horse likes him. So it's good to again have this depth that we're creating. Just back on Heaney, we'll obviously talk about him a bit later on. Signed that massive contract extension. So and you think about Melbourne in his draft year. Melbourne placed a bid on him. And then obviously we covered it and took him in 18, but they also took Christian Petrarca that year, who obviously just won the Norm Smith in a premiership. So I think I'm with you, Steve. I'm hopeful that he can start to be spoken in those, in that light with those big game changing players. So fingers crossed he has a big season there. Okay, so those that didn't play were, just for clarity, were Laddams, Amati, Melican, Sheether, Corey Warner, and Naismith again. And as we've touched on, no injuries. Fantastic. Have you got anything else there, Steve-O?
Yeah, I'm curious as to this concept of the we chatted about this before, but this community series, right? So the idea, at least as I understand it, is this is the 2 weeks of the year where they get out to all the different areas apart from the capital cities, and they sort of spread footy, and they give people outside the major cities a chance to watch some like AFL level footy, albeit a preseason game, but still. I went and did a count, and of 18 preseason matches, 15 of them were in capital cities and/or established AFL venues, with a game in Albury, one game in Devonport, Northern Tasmania, and one game in the Gippsland. I was a bit confused as to what exactly the purpose of this community series round is then, I suppose. I thought, especially after the COVID stuff, now that things are more open, the idea was, to go and reward all of the fans around the country, but I guess they rewarded the fans in the major cities, and they didn't turn up. There was no one at most of the games.
Yeah, they could have had the same thing out, in the region. So yeah, it was interesting because in the past they've been pretty good with that, but this year they were not very good with that, were they? So, look, I think you were saying earlier off air that Albury is basically Victoria heartland, regional country. I mean, it's not. It's obviously in New South Wales, but
like AFL heartland for sure.
AFL heartland is treated like that. So there was a fairly big crowd there because there's a lot of diehard footy fans there. But it was a curious one, and I think you mentioned much earlier that in the past they'd have more games in the preseason. They might have 2 games of the official Amy Community Series. So maybe cutting it down to just that one plus that unofficial practice match meant that the potential locations got. They missed out, which is a shame. But I guess there's that trade-off between, not playing too many games and, playing enough so that you're ready to hit the ground running in round 1. But anyway, let's see how we go. Obviously, there's Swans fans all around the country, and we're stoked for that and by that. But all right, Steve, we're going to get on to our best 22 for round 1. So this is my position has certainly morphed after game 1 and game 2. But I think we'll talk about the game 2 version, which is actually 100% the same as yours. So I'll pass the conch over to you, mate, and you can read it out on like for both of us, and we'll just have a general chat after that.
Okay, so we've got the same team. Interesting. Yeah, I changed a couple of my thoughts based on the second preseason game as well. But from the back line, I reckon, and this isn't necessarily what the Swans I think might do, but this is what I would like, because there's a couple of choices in here which are based on players I'd like to see more from.
Yeah.
But so honestly, there's about probably 7 in or 18 that I reckon are locked in, and then the rest of them, I have no idea what Longmire and Co are going to do with them, to be honest. But yeah, so from the back line, I reckon Lloyd, Paddy McCartan, Rampy, Cunningham, Tom McCartan and Blakey on the half-back line, and then across the centre, McInerney and Florent on the wings, and Callum Mills, fingers crossed, in the centre. Half-forward line, this is the forward lines where it gets a bit more up in the air, I guess. I think most people would agree on those first 9 that I've read out. Half forward line, Hayward and Goulden on the flanks. And then I've got McDonald at centre half forward, young Logan McDonald. Then in full forward line, this is also a bit unsure. Franklin at full forward is obvious, but then Wicks and Laddams in the forward pockets. And then Ruckman, Tom Hickey, Luke Parker and Heaney on the ball, and then on the bench we've got Josh Kennedy, Campbell, Rowbottom, Warner, and then Stevens, very, very unlucky 20 sub.
Yeah. So, definitely, mate. So so after the first game, I actually had McLean starting in that forward line, and then had McDonald on the bench and Stevens on the interchange. But then seeing that they're persisting with Kennedy in the back line, which was a little bit of a surprise for me, but not really if you think about the where he's at in his career. They're doing it. Scott Pendlebury's doing it in Collingwood at the moment, so it's not uncommon. I think Jared McVeigh also played on on the halfback in the latter years of his career. So it's not totally uncommon, but yeah, I just think there's a sort of a log jam that sort of starts in that forward half, isn't it? And there's a lot of pressure there on getting a spot. And as we've touched on, we're quite tall now. So with the injection of Laddams, who obviously he's a legitimate ruck in his own right, but he's a very handy key forward as well. So we've got Laddams and Buddy, we've got Hickey, we've got the two McCartan boys that are pretty tall, and who I'm missing out on there. I think that's about it. So we're covered for height, right? And then Rowie stepping up in that game too sort of, made me think that he's got to come in. And I mean, I had him after game 1, but I wasn't as confident. But after game 2, I think, he deserves that spot. But just Dill Stevens a bit unlucky there, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. And then the other one who's sort of on that sort of question mark area is Campbell. But I just think watching those first 2 preseason games, it was very clear that they were playing Campbell in a role through the back line and like across half back and then pushing up. So I just think that he seems to have a more clearly established role in the 22 than Stevens does, even though Stevens played pretty well. But the midfielders in general, I don't think there's as much. We don't have as much midfield depth. We have a lot more depth. If you think the depth lines, I've just made a couple of notes. Our backline depth line of people who didn't get picked in this 23, we've got Milliken, Fox, and then Gould. And we can talk about him for ages in terms of what may or may not happen with him, given the state of the side. And then, excuse me. And then forwards, we've got McLean missing out, Reid missing out, and I'm going to say his name wrong.
Amati Party, mate.
Amati Party. I have to remember Amati Party. I keep wanting to say
Amati Party. Yep.
Ash Barty, Amati Party. She did well, didn't she? Winning that.
Unreal.
What a legend. Yeah, killed it. But then, so that's 2 very strong depth lines for the defenders and the forwards. But then, and remembering that Papley's missing from this team as well, so he'll come back for someone. He's definitely back in as soon as he's fit. But then the midfielders, we have Stevens 23rd, and then the rest of the midfield depth in terms of people who I think are probably going to play realistically in the first half of the coming season. We've got Bell, O'Riordan, Sheldrick, and Roberts. So that's much thinner depth in the mids than we have in those other positions. The forward line logjam in particular is tough because there's not that many spots available for talls, and we've got some good ones.
Yeah, I'd probably have O'Riordan in the defensive mix just because he's played off the halfback. But he could easily go forward as well, and he might be primed for that as well. But just on Reid, obviously a lot of people. He's such a divisive player at the moment. There's the old fan favourites, the 2012 era Reid, who showed so much potential, and then those who are just calling for blood, really. And I don't think it needs to be that extreme, but he couldn't catch a cold against the Roos, unfortunately. Like, he was presenting, but he just couldn't clunk any. And if he'd caught half of those ones he dropped, he'd probably have kicked 3 goals or something. But again, look, I don't think he's in our best 22. He's probably in our best 30 players at least, but it's just fantastic to have someone of his quality as a depth player there on the fringe. I do feel sorry for Amati in a sense. I think he's got a groin injury coming back from a groin, but I think he showed some real signs last year. I think for the future, if we can keep these young players, we're going to have such a good core team, because you think the likes of, Buddy's going to have to eventually retire. We'd love for him to go on forever, but, and then, Sinclair's going to drop out, Reid's going to drop out. And then all of a sudden, you've got on Hickey will too at some point, so you've got Laddams and Stretch in the middle. I don't know how they're going to play it, but you got to fit Amati in there somewhere, because if you've got McLean and McDonald up front and both McCartans up back, I would like the Swans to find a spot. Well, I'd like Amati to work hard to force his hand or their hand. But the point is we've got some really good depth. We're looking good. So where all this is headed is a question, Steve, I think I'll ask you, and I think a lot of Swans fans have been wondering. Do you think this looks like a team that can actually challenge for the flag this year, given how we went last year? Can we back it up? And is this the team to do that?
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the players that we've listed that are not in the senior team, that already says that there's a very strong list of 22 to 25 players. When we're talking about guys like Milliken and Fox and McLean and Reid and Amati and Stevens and Bell and O'Riordan, these are all players who are proven capable at AFL level. That's a very, very strong basis, and I'm very much on the side of positive towards Sam Reid, by the way, for the record.
Yeah.
I think he's a very good player. I mean, he didn't have his best game, but sometimes you drop a few marks. I'm not too bothered by that, and he can cover in the backs as well.
Yeah.
If one of those talls goes down, then he can easily slot in there. So I think that's a very good, best 30 or so players. And Premiership, I don't know, but I certainly think that we can get into the top 4. Like, that's a good enough team to get in the top 4. They only missed the top 4 on percentage last year, So that's where you need to be if you want to try and win a Premiership, is the top 4. And it's going to come down, I think, to how much improvement comes from the under 25s. We know what we're going to get from the older ones, and some of them are being gradually, I guess, cycled into different positions, like Rampy and Kennedy in particular, and then Franklin with time, and Hickey, as you said. So I think that they're going to get high quality out of their high quality players. If that younger group can perform, there's no reason why they can't be a decent contender in the top 4.
Yep, I share your sentiment, mate. I just also lastly want to flag Florent. We've both got him locked in on that wing, and he's obviously, he's at that point in his career where I think everyone's waiting for him to break out. But at times you question his decision making and all that sort of stuff. I think it was pretty quiet, a little bit like Rowie after game 1. Second game sort of came into it, and I think it's possible that he could be the one that, if Dill Stevens just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing in the VFL, he could be that one that potentially slips out. I know that's a bit of a big call, but I'm just going to flag it here. And if it happens, you heard it here first. But yeah, I think Florent, it's all in his control, whether he keeps that spot. But if he does slip and show a bit of inconsistency, then I think he might be one of the ones to lose his spot. But anyway, yeah, all right.
Yeah,
all right, so,
on Florent, actually, while we're talking about him, I think he's one that we probably have maybe it's probably time with Florent to now shift expectations. I mean, he was drafted in the first round, so it was like pick 14 or 15 or 16
13,
or something.
Yeah.
So relatively high draft pick, and I think that brings a level of expectation, and so we're expecting him to break out and be a star. And maybe that's just not going to happen. But what he will be is a very solid role player, like a strong B grade level footballer, and that's fine. I mean, we can't afford to have 22 grade A players in the team. So what he brings to the team might just be a player who plays his role every week and doesn't necessarily stand out. But like you said, there's going to be competition. At the same time, we're looking at the squad that's only really got one injury. It's not going to be that often during the season that we're going to have only one player missing, which is Papley.
Yeah.
So chances are, if Florent's fit, he's going to play, and so Stevens. Both of them will.
Yeah.
Rowbottom, all these sort of fringe midfielders that are already in that best 25.
Yep.
They're probably going to play most games that they're fit.
Yeah. I'm sorry, just a quick correction. It was 2016 draft year, and he was pick 11. So
pick 11. So it's a high pick. Yeah.
He's our first round draft pick that year. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's good, and he's a very good player. But yeah, he's not looking like a McInerney or anything.
Yeah.
But he's one of those ones where I talk about improvement from that sort of under 25-ish group. If we can get a really, really solid role playing season out of him, there's no reason that we can't improve on last year. Last year we made the finals. This year, try and win a final, win a couple, and you're in a prelim, and you're a game away from a grand final. So there's the squad to do it. The players, when you look at the list, it's a good list.
Yeah. Very excited, and I think most Swans fans are too. So, fingers crossed, mate. All right, let's have a quick look at the fixture. Well, we've done a little bit of analysis here, helped by the AFL guys, obviously. But of the top 8 teams from last year, we're playing the Western Bulldogs, GWS, and Essendon each twice. Of the rest of the top 8, we have 2 away games, so Melbourne and Port Adelaide, and 2 home games, Geelong in round 2 and Brisbane Lions. Of the rest of the teams that placed 9th to 18th last year, we played St Kilda, who came 10th last year, North Melbourne, who are obviously wooden spooners. We play them each twice. And then we play West Coast, Fremantle, Carlton, and Hawthorn away, and Richmond, Adelaide, Gold Coast Suns, and Collingwood at home. And going by the AFL Journo's rating system, we actually have the equal 8th easiest fixture and the easiest of all top 8 teams. So coupled with what we're talking about with having a pretty good looking squad and solid depth, plus a fairly decent run in the fixture, yeah, it could come together. You got any comments there on the fixture, Stevo?
Yeah, I think Giants and Essendon twice out of the finalists, plus the Bulldogs made the grand final, but let's discount them. Giants and Essendon, both of those are sides which not everyone is convinced will make the finals. Like they're ones who are on that edge, probably. That is a good fixture, really. I mean, it's fair enough too. If we came 7th or 8th or something, like we didn't win the first week of the final, so we finished 7th or 8th, and so fair enough that we should get an easier fixture than the top 6. I hadn't looked at that, but yeah, if we can bank some points against those teams, then we could be looking at another hopefully 15 plus win season.
So let's say here, Stevo, the silver lining of the 1 point loss is that our fixture is slightly easier than what it could have been. Because if you remember, we actually finished 6th at the end of the home and away, but we only missed out on the top 4 by percentage. So, if we had gotten through and we played someone and we gotten a win, then our fixture, we'd probably be playing a few more tougher teams. So this is the silver lining, I think. But which means the conditions are looking positive. So
yeah, because they do it, isn't it? That it's like the way that they allocate the fixture. It's based on 6-team brackets. So the top 6 get put into a box, and then the next 6 and the next 6. So we just missed that top 6. So we get a marginally easier fixture at least.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So I think you got something to say about the D's here, mate.
Yeah, because I was never on the Demon train, and I'm still not. Because the one good thing to come out of all of this also is that we get to cheer against a team for the first time. We've never been in this situation, not that I can remember, where we've had a first-round draft pick tied to the performance of another team since this future draft pick trading. But this year we do, because we get Melbourne's first-round draft pick. So the lower down the ladder that Melbourne come, the better pick. If Melbourne comes last, we get pick 1. So let's all hope that they have a chaotic season and all sorts of premiership hangover problems, and we pinch a top pick.
I went back through the past couple of years, and I'm pretty sure it was the Eagles who finished, I think it was 10th in 2019 after that huge flag win against the Pies in 2018. So let's hope, they slip down to 10, and then we get that high draft. So it was obviously wrapped up in that Dawson trade, because Adelaide were just negotiating with us in very good faith, weren't they? So.
Yeah, it was remarkable.
Bastards. Anyway, all right, mate.
Fair enough. That's their job. Their job is to get the best outcome, and they sure did. So.
Yeah, Dawson hasn't played any preseason games at the moment. I think they've got him.
He's hurt, isn't he? He's hurt himself.
He's not right. I think there's something wrong with him. But I mean, it'd have to be something wrong with you if you want to leave the Swans. But
and go and play for it. I mean, come on, let's think about it. I mean, he must have been homesick, because this is a team that could hopefully get a flag in the next 3 to 4 years, maybe. And the Crows look like they'll be lucky to get in the finals in the next 3 to 4 years. So I don't know. It wasn't a football decision necessarily. I guess it must have been family or something.
Yeah, I think property's a bit cheaper in Adelaide as well, mate. Hey, in other recent news, we'll work towards a conclusion of this first podcast of the year. So obviously, a bit of this is old, but we'll touch on it anyway. So Heritage v Guernsey to be worn at all Melbourne games going forward. Awesome news, Stevo. How about you?
Yeah, great. Good initiative. Happy to see that. It's a cool jersey too. Looks really nice.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, contracts. Rampy, Goulden, and Heaney all extended. Rampy 1 year, Goulden 2, I think. 2 or 3, 2, I think, and then Heaney with that huge 6-year extension. There's news of a 4-year deal reported, or it's meant to have been tabled for Logan McDonald, waiting to see what happens there. Other Swans coming out of contract that are in the priority, or you could call a priority, are Franklin, Kennedy, Lloyd, Cunningham, Florent, McInerney, McDonald, Paddy McCartan, Sinclair, Bell, Reid, Fox, and McAndrew. Steve, who would you fight hardest to keep out of these players?
Yeah, it's a long list, hey. I mean, a few of them are looking like they'll probably be retiring soon. They're coming towards the end. A couple of others probably won't get new contracts. Some of the ones towards the end of your list, I guess. The two for me is number one, McDonald. Like he'd be the absolute number one. And I hadn't actually seen that that report that they'd tabled a 4-year deal to him. I'd be giving it to him right away. I think that's great. I think he's definitely needs to be locked in, because I mean, McInerney is great. Don't get me wrong. I really like him, and he's shown that he's going to be a very good footballer. But there's a lot more running winger, halfback, midfield types than there are 18-year-old, 19-year-old key forwards who can take a mark and kick a goal like that. I'd be putting it all on keeping McDonald and then building the forward line around him for the next decade.
Yeah,
he'd be my number one.
I think that's their thinking, and I don't know if he's accepted it though. And he was actually, I don't know if you know this, Stevo, he was his player management company was the focus of a documentary on Stan, and apparently I haven't watched it yet, but he was there's moments where his manager's talking to him, Logan McDonald, and talking about his contract and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of people are a bit confused about is it reality, or is there a little an element of Hollywood in there? But and then obviously the other half of it is he's from WA, and then clearly the Eagles are at the end of Kennedy's in his last year, you'd think, and then Darling didn't get vaccinated, so no one knows what's going on there. So
yeah, he's self-removed himself from the AFL player pool.
So they've pretty much got Oscar Allen, which is first and second name. It's not a hyphenated last name. You could say that there's a pretty big gaping hole for him back at home. So I hope that, if 4 years is not enough, give him 5 years. I don't really mind. Like, the guy is going to play. He's going to play very, very well. His kicking style is just beautiful. I think it's poetry in motion. I love it. But he took that big contested mark against the Roos as well. So, he's got running, he's got marking, he's got kicking. Yeah, we've got to sign him up. I'm with you. Otherwise, I think you'd probably give Franklin another one, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, those first one you said, like Franklin, Kennedy, Lloyd, Cunningham were the first four you listed, I think.
Yeah.
All of them, just extend them on 1 or 2 years at a time until they retire. So those ones, I think, they're not in risk. They're not like flat risk players, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like they'll finish their careers at Sydney on whatever terms it happens to be. But then that middle group that you said, McInerney, McDonald, Florent, also Paddy McCartan, I think, is probably going to stick around.
One. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it'll be like a loyalty signing too. He's not going to go, and I think after all the investment and effort the Swans have put in and having his brother there, you can't see him going and dangling a carrot in front of St Kilda, for example, and saying "sign me."
Yeah. All right. So obviously Sam Naismith, ham crayfish, he's been placed on the inactive list. His knees, I think he's had 2 or 3 ACLs, unfortunately, and he's looking like it might be the end of his career, and that's a shame because he showed a lot of potential, and he was obviously our key ruck in 2016. But sad for Sam, but just looking at the positive there is that you've got McLean, Amati, Sinclair, Reid, and Stretch McAndrew who are all there, and they all become important ruck depth. So, a shame for Sam, but I think the Swans are covering it. And then there's another 5 to 6 players that are coming out of contract, but they're probably on that lesser priority list. And we'll talk about that halfway through the year in the buy round when we have that, that whole status of the list conversation. And that may be a good self, Stevo, or maybe another guest. But we'll touch on it in this podcast about halfway through the year. Stevo, have you got any other general news?
Yeah, I wanted to have a quick chat about the AFLW because by the end of this year, like hopefully December 2022, assuming the season starts at the right time as planned, we're going to have a Sydney Swans women's team running around in the AFLW, which is awesome. And it's getting exciting now because getting close to finals, there's only 1 week of regular season matches to go in the AFLW before finals, and their finals will run for 3 weeks. They play a final 6 system, which is kind of like the final 8, but they just cut out the elimination finals and jump straight to the top 6. And that means that player signings are going to start to happen because they need to build a list. They've hired a coach, Scott Gowans. He's previously in the AFLW. He was coach of the North Tasmania Roos, like the North Melbourne AFLW affiliated team, but then lost his job because of COVID cuts. They got Darren Crocker to perform a secondary role within their football department. They couldn't afford to keep him because of the COVID cuts, unfortunately. And then he got a job as an assistant at Collingwood AFLW, so very experienced within the system. And now he's got to put a list together. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens because the AFLW is very much state-based because it's only it's semi-professional, so the players are only playing a shortened season. They're not full-time players. They have other jobs, so it tends to be players playing in their state of origin, which has meant that Fremantle has been very strong, Adelaide has been very strong, Brisbane has been very strong, and it's maybe made it harder for the Victorians because they've been spread, like over 8 or 10 teams, or 8 teams so far. So that means he's got to build a team. Mostly probably from players within New South Wales, which means a lot of the younger ones are probably going to come in through the Swans Academy. So we're talking very young, and then probably poaching a few from the Giants to get some more senior players, and maybe a couple that they can line up with jobs in Sydney from interstate, but we'll see. So yeah, very exciting times for the Swans AFLW.
Yeah, looking forward to it, mate. That's awesome. Very lastly, I think the Royal Hall of Industries is nearing completion, and the Swans are due to get in there by the end of this year. I've seen a couple of photos. It looks amazing. Have you seen any of the pictures, Stevo?
I don't remember going there since I was a kid, and this maybe gives away a bit of my age, or your age, since we're the same age. But give or take a few months.
Implicating taking me down with you, mate.
Sure. I remember going there to buy show bags at the Easter show.
Yeah, same.
And I don't remember. I mean, it's probably when did they move the Easter show out to home? It was a while, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would have. Well, after 2000, because I think that's when they started to really pump that precinct. But maybe it's I don't know.
Yeah, so it's big, but I remember going there a long time ago to buy my show bags. So yeah, interested to see what they do with it. I haven't really seen much about it at all, but from what I understand, it's some sort of crossover. It's going to be like a training facility and some community spaces and like a cafe or a restaurant or something. So it looks interesting, at least.
Yeah, it looks great, and I think there was a bit of a pause because of the COVID stuff, but it's all pushing ahead now. So it'll be an awesome new bit of infrastructure for the club to get behind and use, and so it should hopefully just make us stronger as a club across the AFL, VFL, AFLW, and our academy programs. So it's all shaping up.
All right, so they'll be in there too. So the space for the academy kids in there too. That's great.
I understand. So I don't know if they've got a dedicated space, but as I understand it, it will be Swans HQ, and so all of the affiliated programs will to varying degrees will be based out of there, and they've got I think the training facilities are world class. So obviously the Swans will have the AFL team will have that. I think they get priority there, but then, the AFLW, it's their venue as well. So, they've got I saw the locker rooms, they look awesome. So yeah, it's just exciting times for the club, I think, but hopefully we can all put it together on the field, mate. All right. Well, if you've got nothing else, I'll see us out. Okay, mate. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. On behalf of the Bevy, I'd like to say thank you very much to everyone listening in. Tune in again on Thursday night for our team selection reaction vid and preview posts. Otherwise, make sure to keep following us on Instagram and Facebook at A Bevy of Bloods for updates and announcements. Until then, up the Bloods, and can you Swannies?